can I have a show of hands on who's doing Scrum right now? Okay, who's not doing Scrum? Okay, sorry. You're in the minority. Yeah. So I'm glad that most of you have tried Scrum, because when I was in Bangkok and I said, who's tried Scrum? I think I had maybe 20% of the room, which completely blew my
Really?
presentation.
And the rest were on Kanban.
The rest had zero Agile.
Okay, so
They were on like waterfall or something. So a lot of the Bangkok tour guys, number one, they only spoke Thai. Number two, they were really new to Agile. Very, very new to Agile. In fact, most of the popular talks was like the beginner intro to Scrum. So.
No, I've been to the last few Scrum.
Okay, so in a gist, Scrum is basically time boxed, right? A week to 4 weeks. There's a product backlog. There's roles in the team. There's the 5 values, and just sprint from iteration to iteration. So what is Kanban? So I'm just curious. Anybody doing Kanban right now? Oh wow! So I may have to ask you guys some questions. So my understanding of Kanban comes from Theory of Constraints by Eli Gorat at the Go. And how I visualize Kanban is like a pipe. Right? Typical waterfall, the pipe is like completely well defined and nothing ever screws up, nobody ever goes sick. But in Kanban, or at least in Theory of Constraints, it is acknowledged that there will always be a bottleneck in the system. And how I usually explain why bottlenecks exist, it's let's say I put a bunch of smart managers in a room and we say, okay, this project is gonna have 4 phases and so many hours and so many tasks, and estimate it perfectly, right? Because managers, they always know everything, and start development. Then all of a sudden, someone falls sick, or someone gets married, or someone leaves the company, or in my case, 2 of my guys just got girlfriends. So I think they are as in love with their phones as they are with their girlfriends. But that's life. And all these kind of abbreviations will create bottlenecks. So all those perfectly planned systems cease to be perfect. Another follow-on to the goal, if you read Eli Gorat's work on theory of constraints, is critical chain. Right? And critical chain stipulates that in any complex system, bottlenecks will always move around. Right? They always move, and you can't really be pinned down as like a manufacturing environment. So, in the way of visualizing work, like a pipe, there's inputs, and of course we have the expected outputs. And as I said, there's always going to be a constraint, or even multiple constraints. So sometimes there are multiple constraints, but there's always like one major or global constraint. So Kanban is about controlling this flow of work to get whatever inputs and to be able to get the expected outputs given the amount of resources and time. Kanban is also all around this. If you have a Japanese car or any car that service well, the first thing you'll see at the service center is that big Kanban board with the cars, and each there's a lane or a bay of cars, and there's jobs for each each car. What's the job type will just flow through the Kanban board. Another example is Starbucks. If you've been to Starbucks, there's the cup, the Starbucks cup. So if you look at the side of the cup, there's all these little boxes on the side. That's actually a job card. The cup is a job. So the guy will write, okay, you want a latte. First off, it's the size of the cup. Right. Another dimension of the job is what drink you want. So the guy will write like, okay, flat white or latte or black, any special instructions. And he takes an order. He puts the card on a queue. Right? The barista's over here, like the machine. Cashier's over here, filling up the cups on the cards, and there's a queue of cups. So the barista doesn't need to know what's coming in. That's the cashier's job. He just needs to pick up a cup. Okay, this is what you need. Prepare a drink. Go up, and pick up the next one. Right? So if you look around, basically this is like the natural way of working, especially things with that need scheduling and queuing. So when I ran this with my team, in order to get them to understand Kanban, I ran this paper airplane exercise. It takes about 45 minutes to do. I don't think we have the time today, but it's pretty simple. So the exercise is run in two parts. And the first part is, of course, the push way, which is the planned system way. And it's pretty simple. There are 4 stations, 5 stations, basically just making poles. And of course, there's this station where you have to draw this little graphic. Yeah. Can anybody guess where was the constraint? I think this. Yeah. So, and of course, I added one which is quality assurance. Here at the end. So typically what would happen is I would be sort of like the manager, and I would say, okay, here are 20 pieces of paper. I need this to be assembled or manufactured into working paper airplanes fitting the specification. I would set up bays, so there will be 1 person on each bay, right? So 5. And each person just has 1 task. There are no limits of inventory between stations. So what will happen is this guy will start making the folds, this guy will make the folds, and this still roughly takes about the same amount of time. And what will happen is there's a stack of half folded paper airplanes just kind of stacked up between 2 and 3. Right? And then, of course, this guy takes a while to do it, and the 4th guy is basically kind of idle half the time. I ran this twice in my place. The first time I ran it, I had a big enough team, so I separated it into 2 groups. And I set them pretty much like on these kind of tables, facing each other. And what happened was they ended up having a little bit of a competition. So the indicator of who was fastest is really the inventory piling up. Right? Whoever, it's like you would start piling up, and the guy would like start rushing, and he just pile less than the other guy. So you're rushing, everybody feels like you're doing a bunch of work, and then all of a sudden this guy just goes, wait, and it's like the folds are all wrong, the stars all wrong, there's a tear on the paper, and of course what happens is nobody listens to the QA guy, right? And actually one of my QA guys was like, no, stop, it's not working, and nobody listened to him. We just kept going. So yeah. Another thing about this exercise, which is not listed here, is like the urgent job. So how this exercise runs is I just use like a plain paper, sheet of white paper, and right in the middle I'll just put like a red sheet of paper there, and I say, oh, this is an urgent order. But because we can't really, the rules of the game is you can't skip the queue. It takes a really long time for that urgent order to get through the system. But that really just shows cycle time. So when I ran this and the first time, I think one team had like 12 airplanes that was meeting specifications. So we had 8 out of 20 which failed QA. Right? So we still didn't meet the goal of having 20 working paper airplanes. The other team had 3 out of 20. Right? Defects was like he cheated on the stars. Some of it even looked like stars with like circles. Tears on the airplane. Some of these folds were completely misaligned. So it was pretty bad. Then the next, yeah, so that guy was really unhappy. Okay, so the next run is using pull. And the only difference between the first run and the second run is we introduce these whip boxes, right? And the limit is just 1, just for 1 paper airplane. So that means if I'm folding this, I will put it into the whip box. And this person here, this station here, will have to pull from the whip box. Let's say it gets down to here where this is the constraint. And he's pulling from here. So let's say there's inventory here. And this guy is done. He cannot put anything into this box. He has to wait. Right? Before this guy has to pull it in, then he puts it in. And and then basically we get up to 20. So the results. Oops. Okay. So the results that we had, from a few runs, I just kind of looked at the old data and aggregated, was that the pull run took a total longer time than the push run. But where the magic comes from is on the quality part of it. So if we were to just to take 20 airplanes divided by the time for push, it's 26 seconds per plane. It's about 28 for push. So of course that looks, that doesn't look so good. But if we factor in the quality part of it, basically it takes a lot less time to make one working product. Right. So we save on. So we save on, we didn't have to waste raw resources like the paper. We had higher quality, less wastage, and more critically, it was a lot calmer. Where the first run there was a lot of kancheong, or like rushing jobs and like frantic work. If I were to show you, or if you were to run it on the Kanban run, the push run, the pull run, it just seems serene, like really calm. So when we did like a quick retro for the push and the pull, one of the realizations that I myself had with the team was that's what it means to have a sustainable pace. We still got work done. There was still a lot of output, but there was no like franticness or rushing, and each station could just really focus on doing the job well. So, okay, so why does Kanban work then? Right? Kanban basically controls the flow of work through the bottleneck. Right? Pushing is like you're just trying to push through the bottleneck. Pulling just acknowledges there's a bottleneck there, and you can only go as fast as the bottleneck. Now, what that means for me as a development manager is I will have to identify bottlenecks and basically figure out what causes the bottlenecks and break through that. Right? And in theory of constraints, there's a process for basically identifying and elevating constraints to basically raise velocity or flow. Another one is why Kanban works is it reduces waste. Right? Working product has no value to the customer. We can't ship or we can't sell a half-folded airplane just as much as we can ship half-working software. Right? Either it works or it doesn't work. Right? Nobody's going to pay us for crappy software. So in my past experience where we were doing push, we did a bunch of code. Actually reminds me of one of the projects I worked on. So we were rebuilding one of the pieces of software for, we call it ingest automation in broadcasting. So basically it's like a glorified TiVo or like a programmable recorder. And we were proud of ourselves that we came up with a specification, and we did all the implementation, and we did it all in like 6 months, like a full-scale system in about 6 months. So we were like pretty happy about that. And we showed it to our key stakeholders, which is in quality, and they basically said, no, this is not what we want. And it took us another whole year to rebuild everything. So the question was, the moral was, we were proud of ourselves for doing basically what had no value. Just because my director at the time was saying, just do as quickly as you can, but it had no value. So why just in the paper airplane scenario, we didn't have to be fast, but we just had to build what was required. And of course, a lot of it is just trying to keep on your inventory. So in the case of code, it's doing what's absolutely necessary. Don't over-engineer things. Don't build superfluous features, and work on things that really have high value. So for me as a manager, I spent a lot of my time doing this, identifying and managing constraints. So in my team, some of it is skills. Certain people may lack certain skills or domain knowledge in a part of a system, because it is a pretty large system. Some of it is resourcing. Maybe I don't have enough testers, or I don't have enough developers, I don't have a developer with a certain skill set. One of the key problems I had was my product owner was in the US. The development team's over here, so our constraint was time. Didn't have enough face time. Right? So we resolved that by just getting another product owner who was willing to work nights. Like your case. So I spent a lot of my time just kind of identifying constraints, running little experiments to see, okay, does this actually make a difference? Or it could just be a wrong identification of constraint. So another thing we focus on and I guess I was guilty of this when I was doing Scrum too, is we were doing stand-ups, we were doing retros, we were doing everything except prioritizing the backlog. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes we prioritize and we don't reprioritize consistently. So yeah, someone would pick off the top, but that's not actually the most important thing. Or developer discipline, they would cherry pick. Like, I got 10 items in the backlog, but what if the top item is kind of like the work nobody wants to do? So sometimes in my team, I'll see, oh, they got like the second item or third item. Right? But really what had to be done was top mostly. So the whole lesson with Kanban and Kanban for me specifically was really impressing upon the team that the top thing is the most valuable thing. It's not the most important thing, it's the most valuable thing. And by completing it, that person is directly contributing value to the company. Right? And that took me a while to instill, but now at least they get it. You know, they may not like doing that you know, so-called most important thing, but they would at least do it. So another thing was is eliminating waste. We were doing retros for quite a while, and we kind of reached a stage where it got really, really stale. It was like a same old thing, and it was like we were dreading retros. So after doing Kanban and learning a bit about waste, one of my guys basically said, "I think you're having too many meetings." And I was kind of shocked. I was like, "Oh, I thought I was doing all these things for you." And I said, "Well, you're having too many meetings. Like, these things you're impressing and all these exercises are great, but it doesn't leave the time for us to do the work." So I didn't realize I was doing that. I thought I was doing a good job. So we basically came up with, okay, Wednesdays, no meeting days, half of Thursdays, half of Tuesdays, no meeting days. So we just blocked it on the calendar. And managers had, and I had to negotiate with all the other managers. It's, you want a meeting? It has to be outside of this no meeting day, or they're not going to come to your meeting. And how that limited the waste was, again, I'm guilty of this. When I schedule my one-to-ones, I do it in half-hour blocks with 15 minutes in between. So let's say 3 to 3:30, 3:45 to 4:15. What I didn't realize was the guy I had a one-to-one with at that time, he could have had another meeting with another manager or another party, and that person would build in this little block of buffer. So he would do half an hour, rush 15 minutes, try to do a bit of work, have to go to another meeting. And the context switch, and they say the context switches was basically a productivity killer. So we basically just bunch up a bunch of meetings together and just have no meeting days. So if you want to do Kanban, how would you do it? Or at least Kanban and Scrum. You need a task board. So if you're doing Scrum, you should have a task board already. You need to have sort of work steps. For me, myself, we have testers. We have functional testers. So there will be a development phase and there will be a test phase. But we kind of expanded on that a little bit, and I'll show you later. And of course, the most critical is to put in those Kanbans or those work in progress limits between steps, and also limits in each of the workstations. So why would you do Scrum and Kanban? I know some eventually, right? Yeah, I think you said, someone said, why do Scrum Bun? Because it doesn't work. Huh?
I'm doing Scrum.
Was it you?
Question.
Welly, maybe, was it you, Welly? You said someone said like Scrum Bun doesn't work or something like that.
Now everyone is doing Scrum Bun now.
So I'll be honest, why am I doing Scrum Bun and not the Scrum Bun?
I think it's Latanya, it's not me.
I think, right?
Yeah, I think so, right?
I think it's
It's
Jeff.
running now, it's running.
Jeff.
So why do I do Scrum Bun, right, and not just Kanban? I'm in a Scrum environment. I have to do Scrum, right? The company has paid a bunch of consultants, paid for software, invested a lot of time and effort into changing our organization from what it was before to a Scrum environment. So I'm not going to fight that. I'm not going to fight that. Second one, we're not as mature yet. We're still learning, especially now for Grass Valley. The product guys and the sales guys are starting to understand Scrum and why it works for them. I wouldn't want to be the guy who says, oh, you know, we're doing Scrum, but this is Kanban thing, and just confuse everybody. Because right now it's kind of working. some people just fear change, right? Some managers fear change. And lastly, for me, it's basically this. I'm trying to hide. I when I did it, I hid it. To be honest, right? Because I was trying something new, and because of this, if I know I were to go to management, it would never happen, or it'll take 6 months and lots of discussions just to convince them to do something. So I went ahead and did this and be below the radar. So when I said this in Bangkok, a lot of people laughed, because I think it's probably a reality in most workplaces, especially if they're trying to change the environment. So how I did this and still made everybody happy was basically I just extended Scrum. So it's not like replacing Scrum, I just extended Scrum. And this is my task board. So the old task board basically had 4 things. I think it had backlog, in progress, completed, and accepted. So for my Scrum Kanban board, I expanded it. So I have prioritized backlog. Right? So I put in the word prioritize just to say it is prioritized. Right? It's not a backlog, it's a prioritized backlog. Then prepare for dev. So sometimes, so prepare for dev is a quality gate. Some of the stories here may not be suitable for development, missing acceptance criteria, vague, whatever it is. So developer or whoever it is will use this prepare for dev to sanity check those stories to make sure that the required items are there. Sometimes it's just a question. In my team, we have this habit sometimes. Some people are afraid to ask questions, or a question may not be apparent at time of loading, but it will be when we try to load it. So this is just a quality gate to say, okay, I'm going to work on this story, I'm going to look at it again, does everything make sense? Oh, I may have a question, I'm going to clarify it with the product owner. Put it back in the story. Ready for development, this is just a pure whip box. Right? I will not have more than 4, in this case I put a whip in the 4, because I want to have a steady chunk of work that I can start developing. So in dev is coding. Ready for test. So ready for test, basically coded, checked in a build. Previously a developer would say, oh yeah, it's done. It's not done, it's just developed, checked in, not in the build. Right? So ready for test is in the build. In test is typical testing. We put ready for acceptance and accepted. So even for ready accepted, I put a whip limit there, because before I did this, towards the end of our sprint, our acceptance graph looks like this. It looks like that, because the product owner wouldn't accept things until the very end. So by putting in here, explain to him Scrumban and Kanban, why is this good? We just basically having this alone made our acceptance graph a lot smoother. The other thing is we went in and defined the agreements for each step. So this is like what does each step mean. So like the prioritized backlog, for user story, it needs to have acceptance criteria. It needs to have a clear rationale. Why do we need to do the story? That's the value part. It needs to be estimated with points. It has to have an owner. Yeah, that's someone basically has to have a name here. We're using that. So prepare for dev. We have one here recently. If there's a spike required, the spike must be completed. What we had before was we loaded the spike and then we loaded the story, and we basically sometimes couldn't meet the commitment because the spike ended up uncovering a lot of things. Right? So the team didn't want to start developing unless the spike was finished. Another one was tasks must be defined and estimated. One of the problems we had before was in Scrum, supposed to have user story with task with hours to get the burn down chart. And I don't know, I know your team's all fantastic, but the team I was working in, they would put generic tasks like create test plan, code, unit test, and the hours will always be the same. Like unit testing, 2 hours. Like how do you know it's 2 hours? Why is everything 2 hours? It's like, I say this story. How many unit tests do you think you need to write? Oh, about 16. That one 2. Why is it 2 hours for both? Instead of judging, I asked them, and they said, it's easier for us just to put 2 hours and just move and start doing the work, right? So it basically became administration, in another form. So for us here, prepare for that means think about the story, do prelim design. If I need to change the database, create this stop prompt, that's a task. If I need to refactor this or I need to write this component, that's a task. So it's basically to add higher quality tests and actual estimates. In development, checked in, coded, engineering tested, unit tested, whatever it is. Oh, sorry. Before that, prepare for dev. We actually include testers at this step. It must have a test plan defined. It must have test cases defined. In the past, I've had cases where we would go through development, go to testing, and it didn't meet the requirements, which means it had to be reworked. So I'm trying to include testers up front. Right? Before coding, tester must agree what is the requirement for the developer. So in test, typical testers, testing must have no blocked defects. Ready for acceptance. So the PO needs to accept or delegate acceptance to a third party. Right? And of course, it must meet all the acceptance criteria. And then accepted, we have some other items like we have to notify the document writers and things like that. Basically, it's external to the team. So this, so before I leave this slide, so one of the first interesting things that happened with when we implemented Kanban, and we defined the agreements and all these steps as a team. I didn't basically say, oh, this is how we're going to do it. We actually had a long discussion on how we're going to do it. And one of the things that surfaced was testing is a constraint for us. I've always known that, and I was trying to instill upon like the cross-functional members of the team where testers can actually help out development. Developers can help out with testing, but not all developers want to do that. So I'm just curious, how many developers here? How many of you have ever tested software? But it was causing us a big pain here, because I have 9 developers and 2 testers. And that is because of some senior manager's magic ratio. That we have to have this amount of testers, this amount of developers. So we always had stuff backed up in testing. And as we were talking about how to set up these flow and these steps and these root limits, half of the team started to understand that this is a team effort, not individual effort. This is a team effort of getting flow, high flow, lots of work done. And there was exactly like a cultural shift within the team where they finally understood why developers had to help. And helping was by doing testing rather than being forced to do something they didn't want to do. And as they were having this kind of discussion of, oh, sometimes I really should jump into testing or this and that, some developers were quite reluctant to do so. But through having that conversation, that discourse, the fact that our value as a team, our values as a team, has to be team output rather than individual output. Basically, the team came to an agreement that developers should help out with testing if this column is full. Yeah, or if you can't clear this ready for test. And it's a good signal. The moment it's number 5, during stand-up, they'll say, okay, why is this a 5? And the tester says, well, we're really busy, and we just don't have nothing to do. And someone will say, okay, I'll help you out. So another important thing is this stuff, like stories on this part, is a lot more important than the stuff back here, right? It's just like the paper airplane. The more work has been put into that job, or that item of work, the more valuable it becomes. Right? So we prioritize stuff on this side over this side. So naturally, finishing things up in test is a lot more important than starting something new. So this is just the same thing made for readability for the conference. So what have I personally learned? Basically what is on that board and the written list is a reflection of how the team is composed and kind of the values in the team. those width limits we came up with is a reflection of the fact that we have to have this ratio of testers to developers for some unknown reason. It's also a reflection of team culture. Do I have a bunch of hero developers who just want to code, or do I have people who basically value team output? The other thing for me is I've stopped looking at burnout charts. I don't look at burnout charts anymore. I look at burnout charts. So this is, I'm using Rally, and this green line here is accepted work. Right? Blue is basically completed. That means ready for acceptance. In progress is under development, coding, and this orange is work to be done. I find this so much more important in getting this green line to be nice and curved rather than just going down some velocity. Right? I've in my before we did this, we had nice burn down charts, but our acceptance was horrible. Right? All the tasks would be 0, hours would be burned down, but nothing was accepted. So I focus on this now. The other one is, as a team, we kind of value, focus on delivering value rather than just doing work. And I find that there's a subtle shift in at least the interest in the stories on how it actually impacts the customer. Right? You talk about value, it's like, oh, how is this valued by the customer? Who's using it? What was the impact to the company? So one of the things we found when we were doing user stories is we basically have a rationale item there. And sometimes the rationale would be, okay, we need to do this story because it will make this workflow for this specific role in a TV station a lot more effective. Sometimes the rationale is, well, this TV station is paying us $3 million to do this. They'll buy it for $3 million if we build this feature. So that adds a lot of clarity of value to developers. And for me, being a developer before, I've always had this problem. I know what had to be done, I knew what requirements had to be completed, but I had no idea how it contributed to the business. So at least this is the first step, or one of the steps in connecting the two, right? The understanding of the value with the people creating the value. So another subtle shift, and this was very recently, I had one of my developers basically scold me because I wasn't disciplined enough in keeping meetings on time. And he basically blew up in my face. And he says, how can I do anything valuable if all I do is sit in your meetings? So I think on a cultural shift level, that this last part is really fundamental. It's the ability that someone can feel that they're connected to the business, that whatever they're doing is actually important, that they care enough to tell me, I don't want to sit in a meeting. I think, even for me, if I am disengaged, I'm unmotivated, I'd rather sit in a meeting and play on my phone instead of doing real work. So I think it's a good reflection of that. Further reading, so the goal. This book really changed my whole thinking around work. It's like a 30-year-old book, but I think it's one of the best books I've read in my entire life. This is another new one called the Phoenix Project. It basically combines theory of constraints with DevOps and ITIL if you want something for an IT type environment, but I would rather still read the book. It's better written. Right, so questions. So I'm curious about the other guys who did Kanban, or if you have any questions on Kanban. So I think there were like 3-4 guys here who were doing Kanban right now. I would like to actually everyone's back to stuff.
What's Kanban? He was Kanban, yes.
So how's like Kanban or Scrumban working for you?
I think the most important thing, like you mentioned just now, is the pool system. That I think half of the people in my company, they actually know what Kanban is. We have about 100 people. They actually know what Kanban is by the name, Kanban, but they do not know about the pool system. Every time I ask them, how do you guys manage the pool? For my team itself, with 10 developers, they are aware of the constraints, and I think the biggest challenge is still about managing the bottlenecks, and when you see it, how will you have the team members? Which, like you say, too, developers need to have each other. And I've been working with my team for 1 year. I think things are getting better, but in optimizing bottlenecks, optimizing how you plan, and being committed in completing them remains a challenge. But it's getting better.
Yeah, what do you mean by optimize? Like,
When people start to when people think about when you plan according to what you have learned in the previous sprints, the kind of mistakes that you make at different parts, and you know that how many people can make testing here and there. So when you plan, you do better brainstorms, do better discussions. Before you start working on something, you talk to the testers. So by practicing all this or being aware of all these problems, you actually optimize how often or how less you will hit on the bottlenecks. That's what.
yeah, like one of the
And
things.
planning daily as well.
The planning daily, yeah. Like one of the things I like about Rally is they have this Scrum on board and they have this agreements. So sometimes when we do retros and we do a tweak to the process, it basically reflects back in the agreements. I had again, this is probably my fault. We do retros, we say, oh, we're going to do this. We say only, never do. And it comes back again.
That's easy, right?
Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions or anything?
What do
We
you
are,
like?
we are using Scrumban as well because when you use Kanban, if purely you're going to drop all those ceremonies.
No.
So there's a way we do for maintenance, but we don't want. So but because we still want to put that ceremony, and so we do that. Also, we want to time box it. But the problem that we have most probably, as you say, in the testing, it's not fast enough. So the command will send signal that we need to have that sign. And but the last problem that we have was the product order not disciplined enough to clear up the ready for acceptance. So we're going to. So this 2 days ago, I just tell him that if you're not going to finish this class, I'm not going to add more column to
That's
that.
right.
So magically, this morning it left become 3 from like 15. So he say I don't have time, but I don't have time to add the 16 one. So he cleared it until 3. And me and Jeff has initiative to, just so you mentioned you want to put the test in front, right? So we have this mini experiment in my org now to implement BDD. So what happen is we make the test case in front and we write the features file for the BDD there. So we put that BDD file in our build system. So you always fail. So the moment you keep building for at the end you see the
You get the green lights, right?
yes, correct. So this is the way we're going to embark to it.
I mean, basically, whatever you do, it just needs to reflect that.
Yes.
You know, this fits what you're doing.
Yeah, and one more thing, the problem sometimes that I still cannot really find the right number for WIP. It's more like try and error.
It's fun.
So for example, if let's say just now you say like you have 7 developer and 2 QA, it seems like very good number.
Basically, this is not the numbers we started with. We came out, oh, I think this is number going to work. That lasted 2 weeks.
Yes.
Then we changed it. Yeah. So basically, it comes and goes. Like, it's gonna change again because I'm gonna hire another QA. I have one guy who's leaving my team, another guy's being reassigned. So that's gonna affect all the numbers. So it's a living document.
So the last time what we happened is to make sure that our team technically in Jira world they say let's use Scrum, right?
Jira sounds like
So after when they do the Scrum, it become they do Kanban way. So nobody won't bother to put points anymore because when they do points they don't add. So then it just becomes Scrum. So now what happened is in our world it's a Scrum world, but we operate in Jira, in the Kanban way.
I think when we were at Intel, right, there was the guy Ray at Intel. He basically said the same thing. I think teams who mature beyond Scrum somehow end up doing
Then
that.
suddenly we just feel there's too many
Okay.
ways when you use the Scrum.
Right.
So they suddenly become a
So let's be clear what Kanban is,
very quick.
because it's not an alternative to Scrum,
Yes.
and that's what most people think it is. That's not. It does not say don't drop you know, don't do
Ceremony.
your ceremonies. It doesn't say don't do estimation. Nothing in Kanban actually says that at all.
Yeah.
You know, and so in fact it actually talks about starting with what you do now. That's the starting point. So when you're doing something like that, it should reflect exactly what you do today, and that's your starting point. And then from then you can evolve and introduce things. But yeah, if you think you go from Scrum to Kanban and that means you don't do any of the ceremonies,
We do
then
that.
that's not Kanban.
So it's not working.
Yeah, I think Katrina, I went to Vernon. We were talking about this, and
He just come back.
yeah, he's a Scrum trainer.
Scrum period.
Yeah, and he was we were talking about planning poker, and he just said, well, a lot of mature agile teams don't do planning poker because it takes too long, right? And that's kind of like lean thinking, right? Which is actually part of Kanban. It's like, you know, do we need to do things or not that valuable? Can we do the same ceremony in a more effective way? Just a shorter time. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, if your retros are inefficient, either don't do them or do them better. And like one of the things we do now with retro, so we do 3-week sprints, right? We tried a month, we tried 2 weeks, and somehow as an organization, 3 weeks seems to be just nice.
It's really odd, right?
Huh? Well, we actually we
Yeah,
land.
that's two or four.
Makes it hard.
Like when you in my audio players, no tree.
Yeah.
It's always
It's-
12 or 14.
Yeah. So we started at 4, we went to 2. Some teams felt it was too stressed, so we landed at 3.
How many days? Like 4 days.
So-
1 day for planning, 1 day for retro.
Yeah. So one of the things that came out during our retros is something can happen in the beginning, but we only talk about it at the end, which is the retro. So after it was just after this kind of meeting, we went and took a whiteboard and just put that Kaizen board, and I actually got the idea from Jeff. So now if there's a problem, you just say, okay, boom, stick this thing's a problem. Oh, when I walk past it the next day, I can when I walk past it, I can just say, oh, this is a problem. Fix it. Right? If you do that, do you still need a retro? I don't know. And I think a lot of it is just experimentation, see what works. Right? I mean, basically the whole thing is what's your velocity. If you drop retros and your velocity goes up and the quality stays the same, why do it?
I think that's one of the keys when you adopt Kanban is David Anderson talks about it as a change management tool. It helps identify problems and bottlenecks in visualizations, so it helps evolve the process probably more rapidly than
He doesn't even consider it a methodology.
no.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially when we're talking about things always getting stuck here. And the development.
Yeah.
We basically identify the values that we
Yeah.
need to help each other.
So your experience of the developers until you adopted this not helping out the testers is the exact same experience I had. In that even though we were supposed to be a team and working together, they would never ever help out. But when we put up a board, they saw the problem, they off their own that started actually helping out. And I didn't have to tell them at all.
It's
They
that
just
peer
they
pressure.
started doing it.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be the guy who says, I'm not helping out, and
Yeah.
the report shows that's a problem. It was funny when we were having it, so there was 11 of us, and there was like one last holdout. And he was like, no, man, it's like, why should I do this? And he was trying to do it very subtly, like giving excuses and rationalizing. But as one by one, changed your minds and said, okay, we have to help the testers. It's like that movie, 12 Angry Men. You can see that noose was like tightening around him. It's like, oh man, I'm the last one that's holding out. He just went, okay, fine, I'll help out. So that was kind of interesting.
Peer pressure.
Huh? Yeah, peer pressure.
I have a question. I know that most of you build products, so it's only one product with many stories. Would Kanban Scrum work in a project team, in a team where everybody has their own individual products, small products? So in my team, we support many little tools and systems, but it's all really individual.
Same.
But they all work on their own, so
Small products.
yeah. Sorry.
I have about 30 products on hand. Every sprint, it depends on how many product backlog. It's usually one product backlog per product owner. So if the product owner actually manages this few products, and he can actually create a priority on which one to start with first.
Okay.
Not too sure for your case, but that's
Yeah.
how our team works.
So your board is by product owner or by products?
By product owner. Because
Oh, your board is
because there could be
They define the priority.
yeah.
No,
Because
I
we build plugins for Jira and Confluence, and some of this plugin might not have anything to work on in the next few weeks or next few months.
I was thinking more of a merged products board. Is that possible?
The question for you is, how many people are on the product?
So
Can every developer work on every product?
that's the thing. We sort of work alone now, so everyone takes an average of 3 to 4 on their own, and it's actually very bad for morale because and then things don't quite get moving because there's no visibility into what the person does. So we have a Kanban board, but people just don't respect the WIP, so our in progress list becomes longer and longer and longer, but nothing goes into tested or
When you say
completed.
people, who's other specifically?
We have account managers, and all they do is just pressure us to deliver more. They are not necessarily product owners. So
What
and
are
then
they doing on the board?
sorry.
They're not product owners. They're not the development team.
Or they just relay the message that not something needs to get done.
Yeah. So what?
Okay.
Kanban only works if you respect the width limits. Otherwise, it's just a board.
Yeah, I know. That's why to me it's just a board right now. So
The thing with a Kanban board is if the limit is full, everything behind it stops. If you don't do that, it doesn't work.
And if people are working individually,
yeah, everybody's working
then
individually, and
you won't see collaboration. This thing needs collaboration.
I think in your case, right, there's a few problems. One is this would work better if each developer can work on every type of product. Then it will flow, right? If it doesn't work, you need to solve that problem, or you have smaller boards. Right? One of the things, just my thinking from clear constraints is this needs to be built around your critical constraint or your critical resource. So what is your critical resource in this case? Is
the number of developers we have.
the critical resource is the fact that the knowledge is in certain developers.
Yeah.
That's the constraint.
Mhm.
You need to break that. Otherwise, having everything on one board is probably not going to work. Like, give you an example. Let's say I got, let's say, simplified, 4 developers, 4 products, right? A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
I have equal amount of work on each one. Then it's flowing. Let's say each job takes the same amount of time. Then all of a sudden, I have a bunch of A work. Same amount of, the same old amount of B, C, and D flows through. Or let's say even no work on B, C, and D. All that's out of the board, all done. But only developer A can work on product A. Then you backed up in the width limit. It's supposed to stop the line. But it's still dependent on A. B, C, and D is not doing anything. It's just like that. You get what I mean?
Yeah, but can you in the real world can you just leave B, C, and D not
They
doing
don't,
anything?
but they'll say I don't have any
Don't have any
experience in that
answer.
product. That's what they'll say, which is true. I don't know how, I've never touched the product before.
I mean, the sort of thing I'd be doing with the board is try and actually highlight the issues that you're having even more. So I'd be thinking about how you can visualize the constraints even more than what they're visualized now,
Yeah, I
so
think it's,
that you can address it.
I think it's pretty clear. I mean, we all have only knowledge about one little product that we do, and of course that list keeps on growing longer and longer. And because again, no visibility into what the person is doing, so obviously they can drag it out for a little bit longer than they should. So that would be.
I bet you if we came up with separate boards, they'll come in and say, no, why are you doing that? I want to learn about these other products.
You mean what do you mean by separate boards?
If you break up, each person has one board.
Uh-huh.
Let's assume like each person does 3 products,
Yes.
and you have 4 boards for each person. The first thing they'll do is, why are you not letting me work on these other products? I want to
Okay.
learn about them too. Right.
Try.
Then you can start a conversation about project rotation.
So if you were to do that, and you would have one common meeting to look at all those 4 boards. I mean, how
Round back.
Yeah, I think that basically the key problem now, I think, is the fact that each developer is siloed. You have a team with silos.
That might not be a good idea.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to
so,
just.
so let's say one guy dies tomorrow, then you're left with 3 guys.
Leaves the
Yeah.
company.
By a bus. By a bus.
So your company is gonna fail, right?
No, we have a high tolerance of failure.
Interesting.
It's okay, you guys.
yeah, we're a bit more forgivable when it comes to products.
Yeah, I think what she's trying to say is that people don't die there as easily as you.
They got 9 lives. 9 lives.
But I'm just trying to
Yeah.
let you know that it is a problem.
Yeah.
when
It is, and I
people-
think they acknowledge it that a lot of times if one person just leaves the company, 3 or 4 products will have totally no owner.
How
Yeah,
big's
that
the
that
company?
is sorry,
How big's the company?
it's an NGO. So
Do you guys do your standard kind of meetings? Like you have your stand up, you do.
No, we don't
you
do
a
Scrum
field
right
black-
now.
Oh, okay.
yeah, and we actually have almost 0 project management. We try to get the account managers or the business owner involved in project management. So the developer is the project manager as well. So it depends on how motivated that developer is to project manage.
Yeah.
So of course that's not the most ideal. If you have a motivated developer,
It's
they
not
will do
ideal,
that. Yeah.
Can you hire another developer?
Not really.
But I think they're too fragmented to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Shuffle out,
fragmented.
right?
Yeah,
Because
that's the
sometimes
thing.
if the workload is high, you have no room to breathe.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
even the
So
knowledge, right?
yeah, I was just wondering whether you all have blended products. They can, unless they have knowledge about
one
each
of the
other's
first
stories.
things I make sure is I have more developers than I need. I get that slack, right? Number one is retention in Malaysia is an issue,
Yeah.
right? That's acknowledged. The second thing is that slack creates learning opportunity. I can do pairing, I can do rotation, because my goal as a development manager is I can lose anybody on the team, even myself. Right? If you're like here all the time, you can do that.
I was in your situation when I joined the team. One of the very first question that I asked the product owner, well, I managed to get a product owner, but I believe you should have one person who actually have the most say, right?
Yeah, the customer, I guess.
Okay.
Account
Is that person in the
manager,
company
is that
who make
account
decision?
The customer has the last say. The
Yeah,
account
but-
manager relays the message.
Account manager.
Yeah.
That's the account manager. So you need to let that guy know, or girl,
Like, yeah.
to realize that to run a business you need to stay focused. So you
Yes.
can't have 20 products and wish that everything can just magically be delivered. So then that person will start to think about prioritizing.
Yeah, we are trying to get them to do that for us.
So it's a
2
demo.
years.
It's not good.
Sorry? Yeah, we have a group of account managers. They all have their own priorities.
Yeah, that's
Because
why
they
you need
have
one.
yeah.
That's why you need one guy
One
to
voice.
represent them. Otherwise you have different noises, not voices.
Yeah, there's a bit noise.
Let me just my last advice. You may want to go to look at Lean. If say your resources are fixed and you still have to do the work, then you want to eliminate those. It's just a waste of time, right? Too many meetings or context switches. So sometimes if you eliminate waste, you can actually get more resource with existing, more capacity with the same amount of resources.
Too many unimportant products.
So, like, I don't know how you potentially pitch this, but one of the keys behind like K-Man is like when a developer would help out with a tester, for example. We know the developer's not going to be as efficient at doing the testing as a tester is, but the whole point is they can get onto it sooner, and they can sort of also help eliminate that bottleneck. So that's the sort of the concept is a developer might take 2 days to do the testing. They can start now. A tester might take 1 day, half the time, but they're not going to be able to start for 3 days. So in your sort of situation, that's the sort of pitch I'd be trying to do, saying, look, if we could, in this situation, borrow that developer from that other sort of stream, we know they're not going to be as efficient, but overall, we're going to get a lot more work done.
Yeah, that's the part I really like when you said that if you put your stories up there, people might feel compelled to help out. That's the visibility we don't quite have right
I
now.
think you've got an earlier problem than that though.
Yeah,
And
of
you
course.
should go to the first slide, couple of slides, and get all your account managers together and do that airplane thing. The account managers do the airplane thing. sit the
Kill
account
them two in
manager
the
down for half, for 2 hours and do the airplane thing.
I think they know.
I
They are very
No,
experienced.
no, but they'll say they know, but get them
Unless
to
you're
do
doing
it.
it, yeah.
Get them.
Yeah.
Don't worry about your devs. I reckon you'll sort that out.
Yeah.
You got to go to the front of the problem, and the front of the problem is the people not realising
The priorities.
how we prioritise
And
and,
you know
what
when
affected
in the
has.
queue when the cars
Yeah.
pile up, you tell them this is you, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the problem, we're going to bang
That's,
You are the
that's,
problem, right?
that's where I would start. I would start with those guys.
Yeah.
'Cause I think at the end of the, if you can control that, your devs,
Yeah.
they'll figure out and they'll help each other out to get over hurdles and bits and bobs. But if you don't fix the top of the funnel,
Yeah.
you'll never do it.
Yeah.
Just a piece of advice, if you want to try this. So if you want, I can send the instructions that I used for this. I found it on the internet. So I ran it a second time. So first time I had two teams facing each other across the table. The second time I did it, it was just one team, one run. I didn't get the same results as I did the second time as I did the first time because I had a new hire, he's Russian, so I put him at this station. The work piled up, don't care. Just work at my pace.
I didn't.
So it kind of blew the experiment out of water because it was like a natural limit. He was only going to go as fast as he could. So he was pulling. He was already pulling it. So that's why values and attitude matter. So yeah, if you want to try this, try to have like two teams get a bit of competition going,
Yeah.
and then this would really show itself.
They're your account managers.
Mm.
Starts.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, last one. So I'm gonna pitch. So I'm trying to get these guys to come over here. Right? One of the things I'm really into now is the Lean Startup. If you read Lean Startup by Eric Ries. So I found these guys on the internet, and they are one of the largest organizations in hosting Lean Startup workshops globally. So we need 200 emails or 200 persons to just say, I'm interested in Lean Startup for them to consider hosting a workshop.
I think we're down to 47 now,
I think I need another 28. So if you're interested, not shoving anything down your throat, please go there now and sign up.
Just go there now and sign up.
Yes. So spam the
Yeah, no, it's spam it, right?
So I'll do a gist of Lean Startup for those who don't know. So Lean Startup, the book is written by Eric Ries, and that was his time at a startup company called Invu. And a lot of smart people, we're all smart people here. We think we know what we're doing. We think we know what the customer wants. So he spent about 6 months with a team of very bright people building something that nobody wanted at no value, because it was all based on assumptions, and your assumptions were wrong, really wrong. So from there, they developed this model called Lean Startup, where how do I build a product with as least resources as possible so that I can go to market and test it to find out exactly what the customer wants. Does it resonate with the customer? Get that feedback, run another experiment, another experiment, another experiment. So this is, my take from this is good for new product development or going to new markets or just doing things that we think we know what you're doing but we actually don't. So Lean Startup kind of takes combination of business model generation. That's another body of work by another guy named Oscar Wilder. This is Eric Ries' own Think-A. It combines lean thinking. So it's kind of one of those methodologies. This kind of takes a lot of lean thinking and just kind of piles in one big model. So please, if you're interested, go right now. Limited time offer.
You can get this guy called Paul in our group to help you to spend.
Which guy?
Yeah.
This popular guy called Paul.
He's really
Oh,
So I think they come out here and set up just a workshop, or is it one day thing? Is
I think
it 2 day
I
thing?
think it's 1 or 2 days. I looked around. They are charging around $299, but it kind of differs based on the location and based on the
Is
quality.
Eric doing the event or someone else?
This is different. This is
just run by a lot of people who's gonna
basically these startup thingies are popping up everywhere, and from what I understand, they have a few functions. Basically, a lot of these guys represent VCs or angel funds. So they'll come to a city, they'll hold like a workshop, like a hackathon. Group of people come there, learn something new, do a pitch, and part of that process is actually to pitch to investors and things like that. But you know, it's basically like on-the-job training or on-the-job learning.
So for this, is it done in Singapore before?
No, not Singapore, not yet.
I thought there was one workshop, lean startup
For
something
this-
in Singapore last year, right?
But it's not for
Maybe not.
It's
It's
not from this group.
So is there a relationship with the
I don't know. I'm basically what happens is once we get the 200, they'll start a conversation with the people.
They're doing the whole lean startup thing by
By getting
But
people
getting
to come on
investors,
board
yeah.
to see if anyone's interested.
test the market to see where
Yes, exactly. Test the market before they even start talking to us. So the first hurdle is talk to us first.
That's what they do.
Then we can do something.
Yeah, there's another mob that's very similar to them.
Just start up something, right? Start up.
It's like a lean start weekend or whatever they're called.
Yeah. So yeah, I know who's signing up, so I know
I think I
roughly.
did.
Yeah.
Do you have to confirm your
You
email?
probably already have.
You just have to put in an email. That's it.
I think I did.
Yeah, I did as well.
Yeah. Just the-
Just
I've
did.
done
Okay.
tail and
Yeah, I know. You're really close. I think by the end of the night, I'll not even need like less than.
Back do already.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So that's it for my talk.
Thank you.
Really?